Okay.
All right, Hannah, thanks so much for doing this. My first question that I have for you is tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with Moment Counseling.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm really excited to do this. It's my first time on a podcast, and I feel like this is the best way to start. So about me is I work at Moment Counseling. We are in Pennsylvania, um, kind of towards Philly, and um, I work with teens and young adults, and we can go into like the specifics if you want to a little bit later, but what brought me to Moment is first off, I love my the owners and my supervisors, Natalie and Derek. They're amazing. Um, and that they're just the best to work for. Do you want me to talk more about like why I went into counseling?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so there's two reasons. The first one is honestly, I did not love growing up at all. And it was my senior year, and I took a psych class. It was an elective, and it was the first time I was excited to go to school and excited to do assignments, and I was just so passionate about it. And I was like, okay. And I'm a senior, so I'm like, so nervous. What do I want to do? And what do I want to do when I grow up? And um, I was like, all right, it's got to be psychology. So then I went to college and I majored in psychology and I ended up adding criminology also. Um, that was originally my plan is to work within that population, but career change. Um, and the second reason is um, when I was in like elementary school, I had a very big fear of crowds. And I'm lucky that my parents brought me to a therapist, and I feel like it wasn't as normalized back then. And I did exposure therapy, which not easy. Going to the store, looking at the store, and then driving away the next week, like standing outside the car, going back into the car, week after, right, getting closer, and then I'm walking around the store, and then finally, after some time doing it, I went to a Taylor Swift concert. So yes, that was, I guess, yeah, elementary school, middle school. So I had that really great experience, and I wanted to just be on the other side of the room and hopefully do the same thing that therapist helped me with.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that we discussed over the phone that the reason why we got connected was through one of the owners.
Yeah.
And so could you talk a little bit because I had her on my podcast
Yeah.
and I'm just wondering what the connection was, what how did you two meet?
Oh, perfect. Okay. Um, so me and Natalie, we didn't know each other at the time, but we have we grew up from the same area, never met. And then later when we were both in our careers, I just went into like her office and we started talking, and then here we are. That was like, I don't know, 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, we have worked together in the past, and we just really had this connection. We have very similar um therapy styles, and same our brains kind of work in the same way, and it's so nice having a friend who's a therapist that, well, I mean, one that gets it, what it's like to be a therapist, but also, I don't know, has the same approach and similar ways of looking at things.
Mm-hmm. So you said you were going to mention to me little bit about the work that you do now. Could you talk a little bit about the work that you do as a counselor?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, so I guess to go back to like how like I mentioned the criminology degree. My plan originally was to work. I worked in a prison and I wanted to go, you know, that route, and it was a great experience. I loved it. When I went to grad school, I got this graduate assistantship and I was able to work with college students. And then for my internship, I worked with high school students, even though I was like, no, I don't want to see it. Like originally, like I was nervous about seeing anyone under 18, and I loved it. So it, I had no idea until I started doing it. So I like to meet with like teens, young adults, and I've started seeing some adults, later in life. And um, a lot of my clients are, I guess, the things that I specialize in is definitely LGBTQ, uh, and with gender and sexuality and that kind of exploration, and trying to get figure it out, and especially in a time like right now. And the other part, another one of the things I also work with a lot is clients who are neurodivergent, specifically ADHD.
Mm-hmm. And so what sorts of modalities do you use to help those populations?
Yeah. Um, so I feel it's a couple, I guess. What's the word for it? I think it's eclectic. Technically,
Eclectic therapy?
exactly, exactly. That's the clinical term for it. But I like to just say like just a little bit of a lot of things, I guess. But really, at the core of it is it's called person-centered theory. It's Rogers. Um, Wait, it is Rogers, right? Now I'm doubting myself. Yes, it is. I'll have to check later, but I'm pretty sure. But person-centered, it's really meeting the client where they're at, and not everything looks like, not every session, not every treatment plan, that's never going to look the same. I'm not able to be like, this is going to be our first session, our second session. I think it it's more about the relationship, building that, and kind of seeing as we go what's working, what comes up, what do we want to focus on. And of course, I like bring in CBT techniques and DBT, and those more like skills based, but really I think at the core of it is just that relationship with the client. And it's seeing the client as an individual, like just what's important to them becomes important to me.
Ah,
I like to bring that into session. So if they have like a favorite show, like I'm gonna start watching the show, and I love being able to like kind of bring that in, or whatever. It's just, yeah, it looks different for everyone. And then also, I mentioned the skills, and of course, LGBTQ affirming and feminist theory, multicultural theory, those are also, lenses that I use.
mm-hmm. I know that Natalie told me when it comes to we were talking about authenticity and when she talked about sort of when she worked at a prison system population for teens,
Yes.
the way that the way that she would do that was to connect with clients was through not just by saying, "Hey, how are you doing?" but through a deck of cards.
Oh,
And
yeah.
because people would be like engaged, like you want to play
Mhm.
cards? And they're like, yes, I do. And so that's how they she would engage those clients, particularly within that population. So I'm wondering for you in your case, how do you engage your clients into making them have their authentic self, I guess?
So kind of like not a super long story, but it kind of goes back to when I was in grad school, and we were in our techniques class. That's when you do like role playing, and you're in a room, people are watching you, they're recording you. And um I was like, I think it's normal to do this, but I'm like very like, oh, I'm going to use this theory, I'm going to use this question, I'm going to go in and use this technique. And it didn't, it didn't feel natural at all. I was more like focused, I guess, like on like where is this coming from, and how can I bring, this certain kind of like modality in it, or what are the exact questions that like need to be answered. And I ended up doing my first like intake for the role playing in 10 minutes, which is that's this is when I was not I wasn't really, I was just following the script. And then I listened to this podcast. It's um, Esther Perel, and she records a couple sessions, and it was amazing. It was amazing. She was like, you could see herself like coming through. Um, and she was joking and just like you could tell like the way that she was being in session is her. So that's when I realized like, oh, that's allowed. I'm allowed to do that. I don't have to be a blank slate. And then once I started doing that, you know, it felt so much better. I enjoyed it. The anxiety went away, and that was because I wasn't following the rules of like you're supposed to lean forward at this time, or feet are supposed to be on the ground, or I let myself just be me, the person I am, you know, at home with my friends, with my family, like that is like a very similar, slightly different, just because I call them little hats, like hats. What like I'll have like my professional hat or my home hat, but like the main, face, that's me. So that's I think you show when you're like when I'm showing that authenticity, I think it encourages the client too. And yeah, no, it's just being. I think it's being not pretending to be anything, not pretending to be this, you know therapist like sitting and the client laying and you're not sharing anything, just asking like, oh, how does that make you feel? Uh, it's not that anymore.
Mm-hmm. What are the sessions like? Like, say a client comes in with an issue, what goes on in there?
Okay. Like the first one or just like going forward?
Like just the initial and kind of like going forward, like because you meet a new client, you're trying to get to know them, that kind of thing. So how does it sort of flow? How does it sort of start?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, you know, I see some younger clients, so that's a little bit different if I want to bring the parents in. And I always actually leave it up to the client of any age. I've seen some pretty young clients, and I think that's kind of giving them that power of being like, do you want your parents to join at the beginning, at the end? Are you feeling comfortable? But that's separate. So I'm just going to go with like clients who are a little bit older. They come in and I like to just, I don't know. I'm trying to like think of how to word it, like introduce myself, I guess. I kind of tell them like, this is kind of what to expect. Like, I'll probably ask maybe a little bit more like get to know you questions today than maybe normal, but I really want it to be more like a conversation. And then, it depends on like what they're coming in with or like what kind of background information I have. And that's kind of where we'll start. But I like to start somewhere that's not like, I like to start somewhere that's more not, I guess, not as hard to talk about. And then as we're kind of getting to know each other, and also I tell them like, you can ask me anything, and this, you know, and we can talk about all these different things. And I get that. I always like to say, I get that you're nervous. It makes sense because it's scary and it's gonna feel weird. And they, I reassure them like they did the hardest part. They're here, and I'm a stranger, so I get it, right? Like they do not need to open up fully, right? I feel like that kind of comes with time. Um, and then we just kind of see where the conversation goes. It flows, pretty like naturally, I guess. It's not 10 minutes like my when it was when I was in grad school. It's, sometimes I'm like I could take more than 60 like minutes, the whole hour. And I think that's because I'm listening and asking these kind of questions back. And, it just kind of all the same kind of information that I was needing in that like role play gets answered, but in a more, conversational, kind of more relaxed way.
Mm-hmm. how important is it for you to build rapport or trust with your client? Because I remember I was talking to Somali and she said that if my therapist, she said to give the example of like if my therapist is not uh authentic enough or trustworthy enough, I'm not going to I I don't see her as a credible sort of person to talk to. So it's kind of like that blank slate. And so yeah, because she would often see comments on social media and she would read them and that's what she would get. So what is it like for you? How do you sort of what's how do you sort of rank rapport on your level of importance in terms of working with clients?
I don't know. I kind of I don't want to fully commit, but I kind of want to put it right up top. It's that rapport building relationship, I guess, kind of all mixed in the trust. Um, I think that is the number one most important thing. They actually have research that backs that up too, right? They have so much. There's all these like theories, and people will say like, this is the best theory, this is the best like kind of techniques, and when they've compared them, at the core, it's the relationship. And I think like I see that, and I think because without the relationship, all the other things, those are hard to do. I still sit on both sides of the room, and I think it's important as a therapist going to therapy. And you know, I also like having like it's important to me that like I feel that from my therapist too. And I think it's when you're able to trust, you can open up and you feel safe. And I think that's when a lot of that like, therapeutic work like happens. And you can't, like I said, I'm just a stranger when they walk in, and I don't expect them just to, tell me their deepest, darkest secrets or all those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of takes time to develop stuff like that. Um,
Absolutely.
so what are some of the if I could move on, what are some of the common themes that you sort of notice in the therapy sessions when a client comes in and says, "Hey, I have this problem," what are some of the common themes that you notice when they come see you?
That's a good question. Like what's bringing them in?
What's bringing them in exactly?
Okay. Um, hmm. I think this is a hard question. Let me think about this. Um, I think depression and anxiety, and sometimes they don't use those words, right? They say I'm stressed or sad, um, is a common reason why people come to therapy. But I think that a lot of people almost they don't think it's like valid enough to go to therapy. And they kind of, that's where that kind of like anxiety comes to go to therapy. So sometimes we notice that people they start when something has just happened, or something pretty like, maybe a month ago, and it's still bothering them. And while we usually are talking, a lot of those past things will come up too, and we start noticing patterns. But I think, I have noticed that since COVID, um, I think COVID gave us this like reason, I guess, to go to therapy. I think that's right when I saw this like huge shift in people talking about going to therapy, people coming to therapy from all different like backgrounds. And I think we were able to like kind of use this blanket statement of like, oh, I'm going to therapy because, COVID. Um, so I think if we have this thing, we feel more comfortable. And of course, for me, I think it doesn't have to be when there is like, starting therapy or going to therapy doesn't have to be when there is a crisis or something that just happened. But I know I'm biased, but uh, sometimes we don't know that we need it until something happens.
Mm,
I think also COVID, and I'm sure, it's something that comes up. I think it impacted all of us. And I think it's in ways that we didn't realize. I think um, social skills, connection, relationships, um, have you heard about the third space theory?
No, never heard of it.
Okay, okay. I don't know if this is a theory that like is I know it, I've seen it online, but I think it explains it really well. So um, let's say pre-COVID, most adults, most people, they had three places that they would go. They would go to work or school, home, and then another place. That could be the mall, the like coffee, or seeing friends, or somewhere local in the community, parks, all these kind of things, sporting events. And once COVID happened, I mean, obviously the world shut down, so no one was leaving that.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're at one. Um, and of course, we see a lot more people working from home, and there's obviously so many benefits to it. But um, I think that a lot of us are missing that third space to go to and to have that sense of community. And I feel like a lot of people feel lonely.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great sort of example that you point to. My next question is, now that we talked about some of the common themes, how do you sort of meet the moment with your clients and say, hey, let's say this client has a struggle, and then they say, I see you, I got you, I understand you, here's how I can help. So how do you sort of meet the moment with them and sort of, like you said, meet them where they're at?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the for each person or what they're experiencing, it looks a little bit different. Um, but I think you might have used the word validating. I think that starts the minute that they reach out for therapy, right? That first call, that first time, that interaction. And I hope, feel it like right when they walk in. Um, and I think it's like it's not one moment. I think it's kind of like built up by kind of like showing that all throughout, and listening to them and hearing what they're saying, right? Like a lot of people, and I work with a lot of women and girls who have been diagnosed later, like later in life with ADHD. And it is this very, this shared experience that a lot of us that we've had is being told that girls, quote unquote, don't have ADHD, or, it didn't go noticed because the symptoms they present differently with women and girls. And we didn't know that because all the research that was done on ADHD and then got put in the DSM was only had men and boys in the study. So that's where we got this definition of ADHD. So I, and now I think we're starting to see like these different, like, that there are different symptoms or presentations, but for a lot of people, they've been invalidated a lot in their life. Um, and I never want them to feel that way with me at all. So it's listening. And, I'm not someone less like, this is kind of like the vibe of what the client is looking for. But I'm not someone that's gonna set out like the whole treatment plan and be like, this is what we'll work on. We have a general idea, we kind of talk through that. But again, it's only one day, one session, and we haven't really even, I don't think we fully know that yet. We have some ideas, but I think in the beginning, it's just saying like, wherever this goes, like I'm here. That's something you never have to question at all.
Mm-hmm. And what have you learned in doing this kind of work? And like, what do you still hope to learn in terms of something new? So it's a two-parter.
All right, can you repeat those again for me?
Uh, yeah, just what have you learned in doing this kind of work as a therapist, and what do you still hope to learn in terms of something new? Is there a new modality that you want to dip your toes into? Or
Oh yeah, absolutely. Something that I mean, I've learned, I think the really cool part of this job is, and I think the reason why I'm having like a hard time with like picking one thing is I'm constantly learning all the time. And I don't mean that in like a cliche kind of way. Like I truly mean it. And I learn so much about just like all these different topics and themes and experiences that people have in the world that, I don't know if I would ever have been like I would never have looked into myself or maybe like knew like started to know more or would never have figured these things out on my own. And it's so awesome. And I learn a lot about, you know, what it is that people are looking like. I just learn about people, I guess. Like, I think that's the best answer is I learn that um I get to learn about people all the time and I'm constantly learning and I'm learning and with this job it's not like and I'm guessing most jobs are like this and but we have to keep our education. I think we have a certain amount of hours we need every 2 years. And I think that it's because so much changes, especially nowadays, things change so quickly. And especially in the areas that, that I specialize in with ADHD, we're learning so much still. And also with LGBTQ folks, like it's more to learn. And I think I can never say like I know everything about this topic because I don't, right? So I guess my answer is just I get to learn every day about a lot
hmm,
of different kind of things. And then what I want to learn, um, hmm,
like a new modality or yeah.
yeah. Yes, actually, wait, I was just talking to Natalie about this. It is parts work. So I don't know I don't know a lot about it. So that's something that we were just talking about the other day that I really would like to learn more about.
And finally, what advice, tips would you give to those who are wanting to enter the mental health profession? Is there anything that you'd like to share?
Oh, yeah, I think hmm, there's like so many things that come to mind. Um, I think when you're in grad school, you hear a lot from people about, like, oh, that it's gonna be so difficult. Like, oh, how do you like, and kind of like putting that doubt when you tell them that you're studying psychology. And I think it's trusting yourself. It's trusting that this is what you're interested in and this is what you want to go into. And also like, and this is, I guess, my personal experience that I didn't get the best grades, especially like growing up, like in high school, and that shouldn't be a deterrent at all. Um, I just think that all these things that like make us us, like I don't think we should see those as like, oh, because I have these things, like I shouldn't go in this field. I think it's the reason why a lot of us are so good at our job is because we understand what our clients are going through in some sense. So, I guess never, I guess, write yourself off and trusting yourself and also I guess more just simply is it will be done before like all the schooling and everything, it will be done before you know it. And I remember feeling at the beginning like, oh my gosh, I have so much time left. And now here I am. And I was like, oh wow.
All righty. Okay. Okay.